I'm Jerry Hamilton here with Keenan Womack. Somebody's covered Texas for a while on the beat. Also works for Sports Illustrated there, covers the NBA draft. Keenan, thanks for joining me today. We want to kind of introduce the Texas fan base to the 2024-25 team with summer workouts concluded. And look, it's not that far away. So thanks for joining in.
Dude, absolutely. Huge fan of yours, always have been. So really cool to be on your show, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's the first time we've got to do a show together. We'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
Fan base likes it, man. We got a long basketball season in front of us. Maybe we'll do some things like this. But look, it's just your general thoughts. I mean, coming off of last year, obviously Texas won a game in the NCAA tournament. They had I would say it was a good season, not great season, right? I would say they kind of held serve last year is the way I'd put it for Rodney Terry and the staff in year one. I do think, and I've been saying this on TexasFootball.com, they have a better roster this year. So we'll get to that in a second. But what are your general thoughts about last year transitioning to this year?
Yeah, I think the big difference is you don't have two guards that are about 6 feet tall. You have some size in the backcourt. I think that's very helpful. Obviously, you bring in Trey, and we'll get to him in a minute. But I really like the mix of returners as well as transfers as well as experience in the backcourt. You had some experience last year, but I really like what they're getting with Jordan Pope. You're getting a lot of scoring. He can pass a little bit. And the Indiana State guys are two of the most efficient players in the country. I mean, just if you look at their Synergy Sports numbers, they are 98th percentile, one of them, and 91st percentile in efficient scoring. So you're getting guys that can attack the rim. I mean, given Indiana State's system was super good at getting guys with open shots. But I really like the mix of talent. There's a lot of guys that are at least decent three-point shooters on this roster too. And that should make things, and free throw shooting is
best free throw shooting team Texas should have had in my years doing this. And it's been on the uptick, and in three-point shooting, your percentage, to your point, Keenan, there's more guys who I think can make open shots on this team off the catch and shoot. Okay. So it doesn't all have to be created within off the dribble offense. I think that's going to be big because Jason Kent and Arthur Kaluma can knock it down at the stretch four position, which is what they basically are in college basketball. But you have a multitude of guards. And I mean, Julian Laird, we're going to get to these guys. He's been really good this summer and just knocking down threes off the catch. Trey Johnson, obviously off the catch, dribble going right or left. Jordan Pope, you said he could absolutely shoot it, score it. Tremont Mark was 36 from three last year. So the one guy that needs to take a big step there is Kendall Weaver. We'll talk about that coming up. But before we get to that, I mean, we have to spend a couple of minutes, Keenan, on the non-conference schedule. I mean, it was a big topic on Texas football. I'm not sure the fan base is super happy with this non-conference schedule, but at the same time, I mean, I'm not sure how much it really matters in NCAA net. I mean, the main thing is going to be, look, Texas getting out of this non-conference at 11-2, essentially, and then going and being in the top half of the SEC. And that's really what it's going to come down to. But what are your thoughts? I'll read out. Look, Ohio State is the opener November 4th. Yeah. Then Houston Christian, new coaching staff on the 8th. Chicago State on November 12th. Mississippi Valley State on the 16th. No, Jerry Rice isn't walking through that door. The Legends Classic, which that'd be fun to play Texas Tech, right? That is possible, November 21st through 22nd. Then Delaware State, then NC State, the Final Four running the little kid that flicked off the refs last year. We have UConn, December 8th, which will be a sellout in the Moody for sure. That'll be, TJ, all the guys will be at that game. New Mexico State, Arkansas Pine Bluff, New Orleans, Northwestern State. So not a fan-friendly schedule, I would say, but it's going to generate a lot of wins in year two. And a team that has, 9 new pieces, essentially, time to gel and play together.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have a lot of sex appeal outside of a couple of games, right? Most of your home games are against quad 4 opponents, I would say pretty clearly. It is important to get some chemistry going, but my concern is, why do you play these teams when you could maybe play like a West Coast Conference team, like maybe play Santa Clara or maybe not? You don't have to play Duke. I mean, they are playing UConn, but I think it might be maybe more beneficial to play a little bit tougher of a schedule that isn't quad 4 games, maybe quad 3 games even. But yeah, I mean, you get your big marquee game with UConn, but I think my tweet about it said this will ensure that fans will be focused on football until December.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point, Keenan. All right, so now we're going to go player by player now, and I'm going to kind of say, here's what I've heard about these guys this summer, and I'll let you follow up with all the stats and efficiencies and knowledge you have. We're going to just kind of go position by position. Let's start with Julian Larry, because he was one of the Indiana State guys you mentioned. He is the pure point guard on this roster. He has had a tremendous summer. If there's one player that I've been told multiple times, Keenan, that's better than expected, maybe, it's been Julian Larry. And I think it's because he brings – it's different because he's not that type of freaky athlete, but he brings a lot of the same qualities Kendall Weaver does from a day-to-day work, wants to take on leadership, really tough-minded kid, and has a winner's mentality. So he checks a lot of boxes of a guy that's going to be called upon to run a team and in some crucial situations.
Yeah, I mean, his efficiency numbers are off the charts for a guard. He's averaging 1.21 points per shot. I mean, that's 91st percentile according to Synergy Sports. So he's as good as almost anybody in the country at just scoring the ball. He's not a huge on as much as, he's not going to shoot as much as Jordan Pope might, but he takes good shots, right? He's not taking bad shots. And you have to obviously take into account the fact that Indiana State's system was super friendly for guys getting open shots. Like there's not a lot of dribbling. It's a lot of off-ball screening. It's a lot of just kicking it around, a lot of ball reversal, stuff like that. So a lot of ball movement. I watched the Seton Hall Indiana State NIT championship game yesterday to kind of prep for this. And those guys they know where to be. Yes. They know where to be to find open shots. And we'll talk about Jason Kent in a second too, because he's as efficient as anybody in the country. But
he's the best he's the best know how to play guy on this team, and we will talk about that in a second.
Yeah, and I always call it Cody Williams syndrome. If you remember Cody Williams from Colorado last year, that dude just knew where to be to score. And he wasn't a big volume guy, but he was always in the right position for a good look. And that's what you're going to get with Julian Larry. He also averaged almost 5 assists per game and 1.5 steals. So the guy gets his hands active in passing lanes. He's not maybe a lockdown guy, but he's a guy that can affect the ball on defense as well. 46% from 3. I mean,
he shot it really well this summer off the catch in those situations in Moody. He's been very, very good this summer. I don't think it's a stretch that he'll shoot 40% next year at the Power 4 level.
Yeah, and that's gigantic for just spreading the floor, creating open lanes for your other guards to maybe guys who attack the rim more. I really like the way he plays as far as, finding open guys when driving the ball as well. He finds, in that Indiana State game, he was very good at when he did attack the basket. They don't dribble a ton, but when he would come off screens and he would be able to find open guys, open looks. I really like him as an engine type of player. Like you said, the work ethic is obviously there, but I think he brings a really interesting mix of system skill as well as his own personal skill. So should be interesting to see how he integrates into this new offensive system, but I think he could be a really important player for this team.
And what we're gonna do is we're gonna run down the guards, then we're gonna run down the bigs. So we're gonna split this up because at the end of the guards, we need to have a important conversation on who of these guys is going to defer and sometimes to a freshman. That's going to be one of the big questions this team has to answer. All right, let's go to Jordan Pope. Look, I'm probably a president of the Jordan Pope fan club for college basketball because there are certain guys that just they'll take big shots, they'll make big shots, and he wasn't on a winning team necessarily, but neither was Timmy Allen at Utah. Okay. And those guys have a little passion to want to win, too, that's always forgotten. They're saying, well, how's that guy? He was on a team that didn't have a good record. How's he going to mix in? Well, sometimes these guys want to win. Do you think they like going 12-20? Probably not. But this guy can score the basketball. He's a 6'1" of the quarter guard that can go get his own shot. I think he can play in the chase action that Texas uses right effectively. And I think this is a guy who averaged 17.5 points at Oregon State. Shot 37% from 3, had a monster game in a win over Arizona, including the game winner. But I think he does it. I call him a combo guard, air quotes, but his job is going to be to score the basketball for Texas.
Yeah, and Interesting fact about him. So he's 1.02 points per shot off the bounce.
Yeah.
Right? Not just catch and shoot.
Yeah.
He's 36% from 3 off the bounce. Like, he can catch and shoot too, but this guy can really create off the dribble for himself. And he was really good last year. I watched a couple of games of his as well. And I think it should be said that he played 2 seasons for Oregon State for Wayne Tinkle, and he could have transferred after his freshman year probably, but he stuck it out. And I think that says something to his character. Now, he transferred this year because he knows he's a winning player. He knows he can contribute to a winning team. But I think there's something to be said for the fact that he stuck it out 2 years there, because Oregon State has not been good since their Elite Eight run in 2021. They have been a really poor program, and he's still out there scoring 17.5 points per game. He's still getting 3.5 assists a game on top of that, and almost a steal a game.
What do you think about him as a somewhat of a forced creator off the bounce? You're not going to hand him the ball and say, go get us a shot, go get somebody else a shot necessarily. But to your point, he can go create space and go get looks off the dribble. And because he can shoot at a high enough rate, he does create some rotation defensively. What are kind of your thoughts on him? Can he do enough off the bounce to find people if people start collapsing on him?
Yeah, I think that's important too, because again, like you said, there's a lot of good catch and shoot guys on this team. You talk about Tramon Mark being one of those guys as well. So yeah, he's going to bring defenders to him. He has a bit of gravity as a point, lead guard sort of player. Definitely focus on scoring, but yeah, I think that's a great point. He can create rotational havoc kind of when I don't know if they'll switch on him or whatever they're going to end up doing, but whatever they end up doing, he will create mismatches because he can just shoot off the bounce. He can pull up. You can't go under screens on him. You have to fight over these screens to guard him. So,
hey, that's a good point, Keenan. You could play under against anybody except Max last year.
Yep.
You can't do that for this team this year. It's built somewhat like Miami's Final Four team was, and that's kind of what I think Frank Haith ideally had in his head for Texas offensively, but there's some makings of that offensively for time. I'm not saying they're going to the Final Four. Please don't write that. But what I am saying, there's some similarities there as far as the makeup of team and skill sets. Hey, let's jump to Tramon Mark. You mentioned him.
Yeah.
So what has Texas not had in recent years? A couple of 6'5", 6'6" guys in the backcourt. So you can play 3 guards. That guy can guard a bigger wing. You're not at a deficiency defensively in man at that point in time. Texas has 2 of those guys, Tramon Mark, Trey Johnson. And Trey Johnson we'll get to next. He's a first-round pick who may be a lottery pick. But Tramon Mark is interesting to me because, Keenan, he's a guy that left Houston that I say kind of go get his shine at Arkansas in a way, right? Yeah. Not be strapped by the system at Houston. So he went to get a little more freedom. He had success. They didn't have a good year. Now coming to Texas, the big thing with him is we know what his skill set is, and you're going to get into that. Is he going to defer at times too? Because there's going to be we're going to get to this discussion. I mean, there's Jordan Pope can score. Julian Larry can knock down shots. Trey Johnson's going to have the ball in critical times. Tramon Mark took a lot. He was a volume guy last year, averaged 16.5 in the SEC. But some of these guys are going to have to defer. What do you kind of like about Mark? What do you see from Mark, and how's that going to fit?
I think the thing that could work with Tramon Mark is where he operates a lot in the mid-range. So 34% of his shots were elbow pull-ups last year. So he can shoot off the bounce a little bit. He has kind of a weird shot from deep, but it works. 1.05 points per shot. That's 66th percentile. He can catch and shoot as well, though, like you said, and that's going to be a big important part for him because I don't know how much he's going to be operating with the ball in his hands. I feel like he'll play a lot of the wing spot for them at about 6'6", 185. I mean, also great free throw shooter, 80% last year. And I think the thing with his defense is he was a much better defender at Houston. There were so many chemistry issues with that Arkansas team last year, specifically on the defensive end it wasn't effort, but it was just bad chemistry defensively. And I think it wasn't his fault at all. It really wasn't. We've seen him be a very good defender when he was at Houston. So I think with a new motivation and a new roster, he's going to be able to take on some of those tougher assignments, maybe the opponent's wing, the opponent's shooting guard. And he's got a little bit of height. He's not built. He's only 185, maybe he's put on a little weight, but he was 185 last year. So I do like the role he could play. It is going to be a question of, is he willing to defer to Trey, though, because they do sort of operate in similar areas on the floor. But yeah, I really like the pull-up game he has from the mid-range. I think that could come into play.
Here's the question I have. Texas plays off the elbows with the bigs.
Yeah.
So my question is, how is that going to change with Tremont Mark? Is it going to change? Is Tremont going to have to kind of change the way he scores a little bit? And that may help his all-around game. But it's going to be interesting because Texas does play off the elbows with the bigs. And with Kent, Kaluma, and Shedrick, I don't think that's changing. So that's what's going to be interesting, how they kind of make all this work, right?
Yeah, definitely. And we'll get to Kaluma in a second because I have some thoughts on him too. But yeah, I mean, as far as wing scoring goes, he provides that in bunches. And, they didn't have like a wing scorer like this last year. They had, Dylan Mitchell kind of played the 3, the 4, the 5. He's kind of an all-purpose player almost on the offensive end, just kind of a dunker spot, kind of played like a big on offense, even though he's kind of a wing build. I think he's a really effective piece. I was really excited for this team when they got him. Also, 4.5 rebounds a game. That's not nothing. This team is going to have to find rebounding from its wings in certain spots and rebounding from its 4 spots as well. So I think that's important that he was averaging, almost 4.5 rebounds a game.
And we'll talk about that. Yeah, we'll talk about the end of the show or in a future show. But I think Texas is going to be a better rebounding team than last year. They're just going to have to do it differently. Yeah. That's going to be the key. Is it's going to be team rebounding, and with more size at guard, that can certainly happen. All right, let's hit on Trey Johnson, and then we're going to go to the 2 returnees that I want to talk about. Obviously, Kendall Weaver, and I want to mix in a little Devin Pryor talk as well. But Trey Johnson, look, we've watched him a lot. He's going to be a first-round pick. This isn't the 2024 horrible NBA draft.
This is a real draft.
It's a real NBA draft this year, okay, where you could go 16 and be an all-star one day potentially. Yeah. He may be a lottery pick, though. The reviews are very strong this summer, and the thing is, he's earned everybody's respect because the one thing about Trey, he's a fierce competitor and he's a worker. And anytime a guy comes in and is in the gym with you all the time and is trying to outwork you, and then that translates to how hard he plays, he gains respect quickly. So let's talk. That's the one thing I've heard about him. So now let's talk about his game. I think his game's maybe the easiest part to talk about, right, Keenan? I mean, Texas has not had a 6'6" shooting guard like this in my years covering Texas. They've had points that are really good, TJ, DJ, blah, blah, blah. They've had Jordan Hamilton on the wing who could really score. Wouldn't guard anybody, but could really score. Couldn't remember the plays. But they've had a lot of bigs, but they have not had the traditional 6'6" shooting guard that's a first-round lottery type pick. What is it you like about his game so much?
I think he's a true 3-level scorer, man. He can really shoot it from every level of the floor. He can shoot from 3. He can shoot off the bounce. He's got the positional size you want from an off guard. I mean, 6'6", and I forget what he weighs, probably like 190, something like that.
He's not skinny. He's strong. He's wiry.
Yeah, he's strong. Exactly. He's wiry strong. That's a good way to put it. I think he has the potential to be the guy on a team full of guys. Yeah. I think people are going to defer to him. I wrote a piece on him for Sports Illustrated a few months ago. And I mean, at Link Prep, like, he played with guys like LeBaron Filan, and he was still the best player.
Yes.
And like, there are some really good players on that Link Prep team, and he was still stood out. So I think he's the type of guy that can come in and get you 17 points a game as a freshman, 18 points a game. And that's saying a lot with a team full of guys who have scored over 15 points per game in their career. He could be the guy. I think he probably will be the guy late in games that they're going to go to because he can create off the bounce for himself. He can, I mean, he likes to do that more than anything. I love his game. I think he could be a lottery pick, like you said. I think he could go in the top 10 depending on how good this season goes. And that's saying something in this class with Cooper Flagg and Ace Bailey and all these Dylan Harper, Nolan Traore. Like, he's one of those guys in that maybe right below that top 5 tier. He's in that next group of guys. So that's
the other thing is he'll fight for traffic rebounds at the guard position. He's not a one-dimensional player at all. But again, so we've talked about 5 guys, and there's a common theme with these guys. You mentioned it earlier. You can't play underneath the screen on any of these guys. That's a very good starting spot for Texas right now, right? Now let's hit on Kendall Weaver and Devin Pryor. And here's kind of what I've heard. What I've heard on Kendall Weaver is very, very easy to put out there. Nobody's ever going to outwork the guy. If you're in the gym, he's in the gym. If you leave, he may still be in the gym because he's going to will himself to a career in basketball on some level. That's just who the guy is. I mean, anybody that watched him his senior year at Timberview kind of said, how in the hell does this guy have 0 offers? 0. Now, maybe he was a product of the portal at times, but he is a winner. He is a great energy player off the bench. So that's what kind of those things continue with Weaver, and I'll let you talk about where he's got to get better. Then on Pryor, I've heard his biggest thing is becoming more physical.
Yeah.
He's got to be more physical, and I think the Kaluma edition is going to push him a little bit in that regard because that brings 2 guys into the equation with Kent and him, and then you have Mark and Trey Johnson. So suddenly you look around and say, whoa, what do I have to do to get on the floor here? This is not looking the same as before Kaluma committed to Texas. So I think Pryor's got a really good skill set, really good with the ball in his hand, probably underrated there, better on the perimeter facing up, and will always be. He's a true guard / wing. Some people even think he could be a big point guard in the right system. We'll see on that, but he won't be that at Texas. But your thoughts on those 2 guys?
Yeah, I'll start with Weaver. So he was very poor from 3 this year. He shot 23%, but again, his attempts were very low. He took about 1 per game. And if you look back at his freshman season at UT Arlington, he shot much better. He was taking about 2.5 per game and hitting about 1 of them. So, it was 36, 37%. I don't have exactly the number in front of me, but there's some encouragement that he's a decent free throw shooter. He shot 74%. That shows that there's room for improvement, at least from the 3-point line. But what's really important about Kendall Weaver is that he's 6'3", and he averaged 3 rebounds per game last year in 18 minutes. So he's going to be a guy that attacks the glass despite being undersized. He plays bigger than he is. And I know that's a cliche, but it really is true with this kid because of his leaping ability. He is a dynamic leaper. Talked to an NBA scout the other day, and he told me that he thinks Kendall Weaver could be an NBA player because of the athleticism, because of the work ethic, and be an energy guy, be a guy that comes in and defends. Now, he has potential to be a real defender too. He averaged, I think, a stock last year, steals, block combined for the listener. And he was blocking shots. He's 6'3", If you can attack, players who are trying to score in sort of a Fred VanVleet strip block way, I think that could be very beneficial when people occasionally do beat him off the dribble. Got bigger players, maybe body him, get past him around the elbow. But Kendall Weaver's going to bring it every night. That's what you do know about Kendall Weaver is he's never going to be pouty. He's going to play the role he needs to play. And that you have to have guys like that on your team. You have to have guys with no ego, guys who are completely selfless and are like, whatever I have to do, I will do to help this team. As far as Devin Pryor, got pretty limited run last year. I watched some of his AAU stuff. He has a decent stroke. He didn't shoot it well, but on very limited attempts last year, obviously. I don't even know how many he took. It doesn't really matter. Getting into his field goal percentage is pretty much not of value at this point because of his limited run. But like you said, he's an athlete, though, and like he can slash a little bit. He can attack the basket. You said his handle's a little underrated. I agree. And I think that if you can get him to shoot a little bit better from 3 to where he can attack closeouts, then you may have something on your hands with Devin Pryor.
All right, now let's talk about, because Devin Pryor will play the wing. Now let's talk about the 2 stretch 4s on this roster, because that's what they are. And I want to first say this. We're not going to go in depth on Nick Cody much today because he's still rehabbing the knee.
Yeah.
He's not fully released yet. So we'll talk about him in the future, okay? And Jamie Vincent, who is a freshman center who's going to need some time, who's grown to 6'10" in a quarter. He's got some rebounding ability. He's got some length. But we're going to save those guys for later. We're talking about the impact guys now. So Arthur, oh, by the way, I forgot somebody. We got to talk about him. Sorry. Malik Presley. We have to give Malik Presley. Up, yeah. So Malik Presley will probably have a role on this team. He's a 6'5", left-handed guard wing from Vanderbilt. Now, the minutes may be tough. I think this is his year of patience, and then he plays more as he continues to develop from the perimeter next year. But Malik Presley has an opportunity to be some of that energy as well. Bring some length, bring some slashing ability to this team in a small role.
Yeah, again, it's one of those guys that you want him to be able to attack closeouts. He did that some at Vanderbilt. Pretty good pump fake. He didn't shoot the ball well again, but again, it was pretty limited attempts. He has to got to enhance that three-point ability so those attacking those closeouts does become more effective, and those guys really do bite on those fakes because if they know you're not going to shoot, the pump fake isn't going to do anything. Like I said, I wrote he might be a utility player this year. He might not play a ton of minutes, played about 12 minutes a game last year. He had one big game at the end of the year against Arkansas where he played almost 30 minutes. He had 8 points, 5 rebounds, a couple of assists. So he's shown he can play. He can make plays. He's a San Marcos native, so right down the road. I think he could end up being a player. He's probably a 4-year guy, I would think, at this point. But yeah, you might be right about the patience, but he's definitely going to be a guy that has to be ready if they need him at the wing spot.
Yeah, no doubt. There's going to be foul trouble. Somebody will get injured. Somebody will miss a couple of games. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. All right, so that's the backcourt. And let's just end with this on the backcourt. Much, much better than last year. And here's the reason it's much better. Multiple guys who can go get their own shot against good defense when offense breaks down. Pope, Trey Johnson, Tremont Mark can all go get theirs. Julian Larry can do enough to create to help somebody get one. Kendall Weaver and Presley can make plays going towards the rim, right? So they have a bigger roster. Trey Johnson 6'6", Mark 6'5" and a half, 6'6", Presley 6'5". So that's bigger. You can play 3 guards like they're going to, and even go to a 4-guard lineup at times because they have height. They have length at that position. And then they have versatility as well. So if there's maybe one thing to be answered with that, what do you think it is, Keenan? Is it deferring? How are they going to make all these pieces fit together?
Yeah, I think, I wouldn't say like managing ego is the wrong term, but maybe managing expectation per individual player, right? Yeah. So, for example, Jordan Pope's not going to take 14 shots a game this year. Right. I think he took 13 and a half, 14 shots a game last year. Yeah. He's not going to have the opportunity to do that. But, if there's one thing Rodney Terry's good at, it's getting these guys to buy in. And you've seen that over the last couple of seasons, guys buying into what he has to say. And I don't think these guys would have all committed had they thought, oh, I'm going to be the guy by far. Right. They had to have known Trey Johnson's coming in, I'm coming in, Tremont Mark's coming in. Like, they have these dudes who are all stars on their teams. And I think Jordan Pope was 5th in the Pac-12 in scoring last year, and Tremont Mark was top 10 in the SEC or top 15. So having these guys willing to buy in, you could create a really scary offensive perimeter unit, I think, with this group.
No doubt. I'm at the exact same place. This is a team that if they'll play with the pace they need to, they're going to average 75, 77, 78 points a game. And we'll get to what they have to do defensively and rebounding later. But now let's talk about Kaluma and Jason Kent. And let's start with Kent because he's been here all summer. Kaluma got in a little later. Jason Kent, if you said list the players in order of who knows how to play the game, him and Larry are probably 1, 2, and Kent's probably number 1. He's the best. He's as good a player without the ball as Texas has had in a while. He doesn't have to shoot it a lot to put up 10 points, 5 rebounds, and make winning plays on the court. What is it you like about Kent? Is there anything you don't like about Kent? Maybe he might struggle to rebound outside of area in the SEC against those athletes, but there's not a lot to not like about this guy as a player.
He seems very high floor to me, right? Yeah. He's a guy that shot 64% from the field last year on legitimate volume, not volume, but attempts. 1.37 points per shot. That is blistering.
Yes.
That's crazy. That's 98th percentile, according to Synergy Sports. He's a great cutter, right? You talk about those instincts, cutting from the perimeter, backdoor cuts. He just knows where to go to get open looks. And he's 6'8", 205. So he's not super thin either. Like, he's got a little bit of build to him at 6'8". He can fight through contact and score occasionally. Again, he's not a guy that needs the ball in his hands. He can just figure out where to be for Julian Larry to hit him on a backdoor cut, or for him to come off a screen. You know, there's so many ways for him to get to the rim without using the ball. And I love that you said he's one of the best players without the ball that Texas has had in a while. He really is super efficient, and it's because of his IQ.
How good will he be? I think he is going to be really good in the ball screen game.
Yeah, I think
you have to guard him. You have to guard him from three.
Yeah. Yeah, 36% from three. So he can legitimately step out and shoot. He's one of those, you know, if you look at the NBA right now, you will struggle to find a team that has a power forward that doesn't have some kind of perimeter skills.
Yeah.
And Jason Kidd has some perimeter skills in that he can catch and shoot. He can spot up and hit threes. I love him as a starter on this team, at least early on. I think he holds down the 4 spot next to Shedrick. If I had to guess right now, I would put him at the 4. I think he is super high floor, and I think he's a big-time impact player.
Arthur Kaluma's a little different. He makes more individual plays to me, like more just straight athleticism plays, plays off his individual talent. I think his adjustment may be the biggest of all the guys that Texas brought in, because he was 14.5 points, 7 rebounds at K-State last year. Hard to see him averaging 14.5 points on this team. So, and he's going to have to play without the ball at a higher rate to me. I know you had some thoughts on Kaluma, but I'll say this. He's strong. He's athletic. He's experienced. There's a lot of strength to his game. I just look at him and say he might have to make the most adjustments with his game.
I completely agree. That was my whole take on him, is like, he's probably not going to be on the perimeter as much as he was. He's probably not going to be taking as many shots as he was. He's going to have to kind of attack rebounding as well, in sort of a Josh Hart way, you know, like the Knicks, how Josh Hart is one of their top rebounders. I think as a team, they're going to have to, like you said, attack rebounding in a team way. And I think a lot of that is going to be perimeter guys, you know, coming in and rebounding. But Kaluma, it seems like a guy that's going to have to play a lot of the 4 to me, as opposed to being a wing. And I think he has to know that coming in. I'm sure that was explained to him. And you would know. And I mean, the rebounding numbers are great. 7 rebounds a game last year. He did score the ball a lot, but I don't see him being in the same role. He will have to take a step back from scoring, but if he buys in, he could be a really effective piece on this team as a 4.
And here's the thing. Texas could go 3 guards in a certain situations with Kent and Kaluma on the floor and really be uber athletic and skilled.
He's very athletic.
Their versatility this year is much greater than last year, and we'll see how it all translates. Now let's talk about Caden Shedrick and Zarek Onyemna. Onyemna, we don't have to go into great detail. He's the backup 5. You want some energy minutes. He improved from the free throw line last year. He's improved incrementally as an offensive player, but he's never going to have a go-to move. But now Caden Shedrick has had a really good offseason in summer. He's healthy. He's gone through the workouts, the full workouts. Last summer, every time I went around there, he was on the bike, right? So this is a full off season for him. I think he's got a little bit something to prove this year. How do you think he kind of fits with this team? And by the way, he is the rim protector. So Caden, if you're watching, stay out of foul trouble.
Yeah, that's the key to me is his physicality. Can he be physical and avoid injury, like those back and shoulder? That was concerning. He still played, almost every game. He's played 30 games last year. So, but again, he was playing 17 minutes per game. He's going to have to play more minutes than that per game. And the most he's ever played, I think, was 20 minutes per game at Virginia.
He's going career high this year.
He's going to have to play a lot more. He's going to have to play 25 plus for sure, if not more, 28. The rebounding numbers are a bit concerning for me, right? In 552 minutes last year, he had 97 rebounds. So he's going to need to up his physicality probably in the paint. And it does worry me when they play the Auburns of the world and he has to match up against a Janai Broome or a Brandon Garrison at Kentucky. There's guys that are big, physical, 240-pound, 6'11 guys. And Shedrick's 230, but that 10 pounds, giving 10 pounds kind of means a lot when it's a big athletic dude like Brandon Garrison is. So I think a big part of it is going to be his ability to be physical in the paint without fouling, because he is the rim protector. He can step out a little bit, maybe even guard out to 10 feet. He's going to have to do some of that as well, I think. But yeah, I mean, he is going to be kind of the key to the team. If he is as good as we think he can be, and he can up that physicality and stay healthy and stay out of foul trouble, this team has a high ceiling.
Yeah. All right, Keenan. So let's this has been great to have you again, Keenan Womack. I'm Jerry Hamilton. This is On Texas Basketball. We're going to do this a little bit more this season, I think. Kind of get Texas through Rodney Terry's second season here. Look, let's close out with kind of our thoughts. Here's my thought. Much better roster than last year. Bigger at guard, more versatility, better scores. Max Abmas had too much on his plate last year when Tyrese Hunter didn't take the next step. It's too bad Max isn't on this team, because, I mean, I think he'd have a hell of a year with these guys around him. Yeah. But that's not the case. So Texas has more guys that can go get a shot. If the shot clock's running down, if the offense breaks down, they have more scoring punch, scoring ability, more versatility as a team as a whole. Tell me about kind of your thoughts, strengths, and maybe your biggest concern as these guys finish up summer workouts this week.
Yeah, I think the versatility is huge. Like, not every guy's pigeonholed into a specific role because they don't have skills outside of that role, right? Like you said, like, I love Dylan Mitchell. I think Dylan Mitchell's a good player, but he played like a 7-footer on offense. Like, he was a dunker spot guy. That's all he could really do. Yep. You have Jason Kent now, who can step out and hit threes at a decent clip. He can rebound. You know, it is going to be tough to replace that rebounding. And I think my biggest concern is not giving up offensive boards. You know, I think that would be the key to the team. And you even look at a game like they could play Tech. They're going to have to play, if they have to play JT Toppin, for example, like, that dude is an awesome interior rebounder. Probably would have helped on this team. But he, you know, you're going to have to deal with some of those guys. The SEC in basketball is not the SEC, the joke SEC it was, where it was Kentucky running everything. Alabama might have the best roster in the country this year. That's very, very, very legitimately could have the best roster in the country.
Golden's doing a great job at Florida. They have a bunch.
Yes, Florida. Handlogton is great. I forget the other dude they brought in, but like Cliff Omarui at Alabama, like, you have to deal with that guy. You have to deal with Brandon Garrison. You have to deal with Felix Okpara at Tennessee. Like, there are dudes in the SEC, that Colin Murray Boyles at South Carolina. I know he's undersized, but the dude can hit the boards. So I think rebounding is going to be the key for this team. They're going to have to attack it from multiple positions. It's not going to be one guy getting all the boards.
All right, that's Keenan Womack. I'm Jerry Hamilton. Thanks for joining this first edition of On Texas Basketball for the 2024-2025 season. We expect Texas to be in the top, probably in the top 25 preseason polls. That Kaluma edition on paper, I think, went a long way in that regard. I think the biggest thing for this team, and I've said it on OnTexasFootball.com in any conversations, who's going to defer on this team? There's 6 guys that are double-figure level scorers in college basketball. They all won't be. That's a good problem to have if a couple of guys have off nights. But who's going to defer? Somebody's going to have to defer to a younger player at times. Somebody, as you mentioned, Jordan Pope may not have 14 shots a game this year, right? Arthur Kaluma may have to defer offensively some. Who's going to defer? And can Frank Haith, Rodney Terry, Steve McLean, and the staff get all these guys on the same buy-in page? If they do, this team could be really, really good offensively. So we'll see. All right, Keenan and I will be back. We'll talk more Texas basketball this season. But thanks very much for joining me, man. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too, man. I appreciate it. Looking forward to continuing to work with you, brother.
All right, man. We'll talk soon.